Hey, Michigan, how are you? Not bad. That was a hell of an introduction, wasn't it? I have to tell you something, that I'm married to a great woman, a Navy wife who's been with me for 43 years. God love her, she's a saint. Now, and before I came to this, on this trip, and that's another story, standing at the airport yesterday at 2:30 in the afternoon while United said, your flight's been canceled. So I drove here last night from Washington, D.C. Yeah, it's pretty exciting. No. It was great. I kidnapped two women at the airport. They came with me, and that was an experience. Yeah. One who's a Michigan girl, had to be. She said, I have to be in Grand Rapids tomorrow. And I said, well, what do you got to be there for? And she said, I'm getting married. And I said, my God, aren't you cutting it kind of close? She said, I had business. Where'd you have business? Beijing. So you're a very unique crowd. But listen, my wife said to me, she always says two things. The first one is, remember, all these people that you're talking to, when all this happened to you, they weren't born yet. So it's kind of shocking. The second thing is, about 6 months ago, I spoke to a capacity crowd at Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas, the largest consortium of house repair company in the United States and Canada and Mexico. And as I was walking in the room into Caesar's Palace, I looked at my wife and I said, honey, did you ever imagine in your wildest dreams, that your husband would be speaking to a capacity crowd at Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas? Did you? And my wife has always kept me very grounded. She stopped, she took a step back, and she said, darling, I don't know how to tell you this, but you're not in my wildest dreams. All right, so we're off to a good start here, all right. It is not easy to come and speak to people in Michigan, certainly not farmers. I have a message for you, by the way, from the shipbuilders in Bath Iron Works, where I was 2 weeks ago, but I'll save that for this. It's not easy because Wayne Wood, Nugent, Jekyll, and all these other people, they don't let you come if you're a city kid from the Bronx. Because what in the world could you possibly tell farmers? Hey, we had trees in the Bronx. I mean, so, that was funny, it was a joke. You have to be able to identify farms, okay? That's in Saginaw County, I got that, it's a farm, all right? The next thing is, you have to identify crops. I got that, okay? I know that milk doesn't come from the store, it comes from here, all right? I got that down. The next thing you have to do is you have to be able to talk to cows. All right, you gotta go in and you gotta touch them and you know, God, it's amazing. Oh, and by the way, just in case you don't think I know what I'm doing here, see this? You know what it says? Captain Rinn. There's one name for me up here. All right, after you do that, you gotta show that you have productivity. So you have to grow all sorts of fruits and vegetables at your house to prove it to them. And then lastly, because it's in Michigan, you gotta show them you can shovel snow. So when you pass that, you're ready to come and you're ready to talk a little bit about leadership, And it's all the same. It doesn't matter if you're from the Bronx. It doesn't matter if you're from Michigan. It doesn't matter where the heck you're from. There's some principles about leadership that you, as young leaders in the farm community, need to really think about and concentrate on as you go forward in the business. Because they will make the tremendous difference between tremendous success and productivity and happiness of your workers and excellence. It's all the same. And I'm going to go through those really quickly tonight and then tomorrow. And I didn't know, by the way, that you could send questions while I was doing this. That's kind of scary. But I'm going to cover this tomorrow a little bit. But I want to really go through these principles, and then I'm going to tell you a story. And I know I have to hurry because the band is coming in a little while, so I got to get off the stage. What's a leader? You know, keeping everything simple. A leader is simply a guy who influences others to get something accomplished. Pretty simple, right? That's all it is. It's not sophisticated. You know, you get tons of social scientists that write all these complicated books. Most of them have never led a single person ever anyplace. So what's leadership? How do you get something done? Good leaders, and I've heard this here in this room a number of times today, are passionate about what they do. When you hear somebody say, oh, I don't care, well, then get the hell out. You're doing something with your life. Every minute of your life is important. You're devoting all your time and effort. Tremendous numbers of you are here with your wives, and you're all proud. So do it with a passion, care, and be devoted to it. And if you don't, then do something else. Get IBM, for God's sakes. And remember this thing. It's always about your people. And we're going to talk about that tonight. But it's always about them, about the people who work for you and inspiring them to be better than they ever thought they could be. Because most people have tremendous self-doubts about that. What's leadership? Well, doggone it, it's a skill you learn over time. You know, you hear that thing about, oh, you're a born leader? That's crap. That's garbage. There's no such thing. Leadership is a skill you learned by hard work, by dedication, by experience, by success, and yeah, probably more importantly, failure. When you fail and you say, I got to get up and I can't do that again. I have to succeed. That's what leadership is about. And the most important thing is it's a lifestyle. Your people, your children, everybody watches you how you lead your life and what you do. Your example is more impacting than anything you ever say. So it's a lifestyle. It encompasses courage, bravery to say, yes, you can, no, you can't, yes, we're going to do this, take a chance, competence at your job, determination to be successful, and respect. One of the most important things, ladies and gentlemen, is respect. Respect for your employees, respect for your family, respect for the people who work for you, and respect for the people you come in contact with every day. That's very, very important because it engenders trust and confidence in people and inspires them to do better. It inspires them because they believe you care about them. And once you get over that hump, they will follow you anywheres, and they will do what needs to be done. Now, is leadership important? I know Michigan State lost today, so this may not be so good. But I just made a list of companies and things that were staggering and struggling and couldn't go anywhere. The Kansas City Chiefs, just a year ago, worst team in football. What, 1 or 2 wins at best? They get a new coach, they go to the playoffs, almost with the entire same team as the year before. New England Patriots. You may not like Belichick, but he loses guys all the time, and what does he do? He gets there. He produces a winner. It's a concept of how he does it. Alabama, before Saban, yeah, they were Southeastern Conference, but they were kind of middle of the road. Now what are they? Michigan State. You guys won the Rose Bowl this year. That guy has turned that program around. He's done a tremendous job. All of these groups, you know, all the way down, you know, even down to civil rights. You want Malcolm X? You want Martin Luther King. What do you want? It's leadership. Changes the profile, changes the picture. Farmers. Why not you? It's the breadbasket of the world. I heard it tonight. I think I've heard it during the day. You feed America. They don't have a clue how hard you work and what you do, but you are so important. Have a passion for your work. Do what you do because you do it so much better than everybody else. Why not you? So what are the things that are really, really important in your everyday life as far as leadership goes? And these were things I beat into my officers' heads and my chiefs' heads and everybody who's ever worked for me. And then when I went into the business world, I did the same thing. Every time you have something, you got to have a goal. When I was a consultant, we would go to companies and we would ask employees, okay, what's your company's goal? Duh. I don't know. Is it to make money? Were you moving ahead? What is your goal? What's your stated reason for doing what you do? Number 2, if you know the goal, what's your role in it? Where do you fit? Think about that. How many times people work on jobs and they do the work and they go up and you say, well, where does this fit in the whole successful picture? They don't know. Well, if they don't know that, how do they know how to make it better, to increase productivity, to do that? What's your strategy? How are you going to get there? What's your plan? I always ask people, what's your plan? How are you going to do this? You're not just going to shoot from your hip pocket. That isn't going to work. Motivate people. Motivation is the most important thing in the world because you evolve and get people to perform at levels that they didn't think they could because they didn't know they could. And they have a reason to go on and do well. And last thing, interaction and synergy. How many times have you said, hey, my group is really good, my sector is really good. Those guys are screwed up. I don't know what they do, but they're screwed up. Do you work together? And if you don't know what they do, how do you do that? I don't have the time tonight to tell you about the times on ships where people would come to me and say, maybe I will tell you this. The first frigate I commanded, the Navy has a requirement to rig casualty power on your ship. That's if you get blown up and nothing on the forward end of the ship works, but you desperately need it. You rig a power cable to the other end of the ship and you hook it up to the load and you light off your generators on the after end of the ship and bring power to the front end. You can fire your guns and missiles and all of that stuff. Very dangerous, very, very dangerous. The Navy requires you to do it once a year and demonstrate it, talk about it. Not demonstrate it, but just, this is what we're going to do. On Samuel B. Roberts, we did it every month, and we laid it off, and we worked it. And my XO came to me one night and said, Captain, the guys think you're kind of nuts. You're making them do this, and this. Do you know how dangerous this is? And I said, yeah, I do. And I'm glad they think I'm kind of nuts because, XO, do you want to do this for real the first time in the middle of the night when we're on fire and sinking, with nobody coming anywhere near us and the water's up to your ankles? Is that when you want to do it for the first time, for real? And he said, no, sir, I don't. The Navy's requirement is to get it done in an hour. The night of the mining of Samuel B. Roberts on 14 April 1988, one of the things that saved the ship is that we rigged casualty power from one end of the ship to the other in 13 minutes and brought power up. And the guys who did it, the guys who did it were a postal clerk, a cook, an electronics technician, all guys that had nothing to do with engineering. Why? Because we trained them. We had interaction and synergy. We made them realize that there are times when you have to step in and do the things that other guys do or other women do because they're not going to be there. Very, very important. Throughout all of that, it's about your people and convincing them that they can do these things. What are 5 principles of leadership? If you got a boss and he's not prepared, you don't trust him. So you got to come prepared. You got to know the business. You got to know what you're about. If you're in the Navy, you better know how to shoot. You better know how to shoot missiles, shoot guns, drive a ship, and all of those things, or else your crew is going to doubt you. If you're a farmer, you know more than me. You got to know your profession and what you're doing. For your people to trust you, you got to have an enthusiasm for the job and how important it is. You got to be honest, ethical, credible, and consistent. God, what a remarkable thing. I come from Washington. We demonstrate that all the time, don't we? Those are the most important things, because what does it contribute to? Trust. Trust and belief. Communicate, articulate, listen, and hear. Leadership is not about giving orders and barking commands. Leadership is not saying, I'm in charge. What was that thing you saw today? The guy one of the members didn't go to the meeting? He couldn't go to the meeting. He said, oh, I can't show up. It's not a leader. Leadership is you go, you think about what you're going to say, you give an order, and then magically, most importantly, you listen. Got to see if this works. You listen and you hear. Some of the best recommendations I ever got in the Navy came from the most junior guys on the ship, who, when I said, God, why didn't you tell me that sooner? They said, well, you're the captain. I thought you knew. Listen. Listen to what they have to say. Sometimes they will tell you that your greatest idea is the most screwed up thing in the world in ways that you didn't think about it. Trust and confidence and responsibility. That means give it to people. Give them responsibilities and jobs to do, and when they do them and they do them well, compliment them, reward them, and make it stand out in public. Say, that was a great job. Why? You can be the greatest leader in the world, but you can't do it by yourself. You just can't. You have to energize, get everybody else involved, create a synergy. Let them have the confidence that they can do it, because they're the ones that will save you a tremendous amount of time and effort if you do that, and increase your productivity and make you better. Lastly, train, develop, and empower your people. It's all important. Never give up on anyone's intellect, capability, or desire, your job as a leader is always to put them in a position to succeed. Now, because we're going here, and I want to tell you a story, because that's the best way to make sure that tomorrow you'll all pass the quiz I'm going to give you at 10 o'clock. It's a joke. Come on. You got to be better than this. All right. I'm going to tell you a story about two different types of people that are going to emphasize what I just pointed out. And they're two very unique guys, because when we put the crew together for Samuel B. Roberts, we had it was a crew of 220. Those stars up there is where the crew started to form. So quite interesting, trying to get everybody together and think and do everything the way you want them to do. The crew is essentially 17 to 22 years old. 6 kids from Michigan. Let me see if I can remember. There's 2 from Detroit, 1 from Clark County, 1 from Kent County, 1 from Saginaw County, and begin Mohegan. Does that sound right? Anyway, those, Muskegon, that's right. And bringing them all together and giving them that common purpose. Now think about this. We also had 14 kids from Puerto Rico, 6 of whom couldn't speak English. They showed up with their cousins and said, hey, I'm here to learn. They were great. They were all really terrific. And we had to train them up, but it was train them up to have a common mindset and what to do. Now, I could spend the whole night talking to you about that and what the crew did, and they were really great. But there's 2 people I wanted, or 2 different groups I want to talk to tonight that get my point across. The first one are the welders at BIW. That's a shipbuilding company in Maine, who, by the way, send their regards to you. I spoke there 2 weeks ago, and they're a pretty tough crowd. And they believe that they're the best workers in the United States. And when I told them where I was going tonight, they said, yeah, those farmers. They said, you know, we're the best workers in the country, but we get to go home at night. They're 24/7. You tip our hats to them. So I said, okay, I will do that. Tough bunch of guys. And then a fellow by the name of Fireman Tilley, who is really the crux of everything I've told you about not giving up on your people. So we'll start with the welders. When I showed up in Bath, Maine, to take over command of this ship after going around and seeing all my guys, I walked in the production office this night, and this class of ship, we had built 40 some odd of them. And it was a brand new design, 2 gas turbine engines like a 747 jet. The propeller was 25 feet across. You could get from 0 to 30 knots in about 19 seconds. And you could stop the ship on a dime. We carried 37 missiles. We had a gun with 900 rounds. Very, very capable platform, really great. But the ship's inherent design problem was they didn't have flexible couplings in it, and so the hull cracked when it worked in the seaway, all right? Kind of a dangerous thing. So the engineers designed a fix for it. It was certainly a concern for everybody who commanded one when you're out in the ocean and the waves are 50 feet tall that you're not going to break up and go down the bottom. So I walked in the production office the first day, and I asked them this question about how are you fixing these cracks? I know the fix is in, and they said, oh, we don't want to affect production. So we do them on the graveyard shift. Graveyard shift? Who checks them? Oh, we check them at the end of the construction line. Oh. Why do you do that? Well, we don't want to slow down the production line, so we let those guys do it. And I said, well, who goes down there and talks to them? Oh, you don't want to talk to those guys. They're really bad. That's why they're on the graveyard shift. So here I am, 36-year-old young guy, youngest captain in the Navy, going to the Navy's newest ship, not a Naval Academy graduate. Everybody looking, who's this guy? Where's he from? So on a March night, with weather similar to this, with the snow very deep, I walked across the shipyard in Bath Iron Works with a thermos of coffee and a box of donuts, and climbed on the ship, the hull alongside the pier, and slid down into #1 fuel oil service tank, and ran into H. Harvey Hinken, the most obnoxious guy in all of Bath Iron Works, who threw his helmet up, his welding helmet, and said, who the hell are you? I said, well, I'm the captain. He said, you're not the captain. Navy captains don't come down here in the middle of the night. And now his buddy, who's also welding with him, throws his helmet up, and he's like, meh. And they had just had a big strike, and they thought I was a spy for management. And so I said, well, I am the captain. Well, what are you doing down here? Well, I came down here to to talk to you about these wells you're doing, these things you're fixing. Well, nobody else ever comes down here. I said, well, I know, you know. Then I brought you some coffee, and it's not so bad. So here, try some donuts. Let's talk about this stuff. So we started to talk, and a little bit gradually, you know, it was like cinnamon bowl and custard. They started to get a little bit easier on me. And finally, the guy said, you one of those academy guys, Naval Academy guys? And I said, no, I'm from the Bronx. And just think of this. I've been here a half hour, and I haven't mugged you or robbed you yet, so it's a pretty good deal. Hey, you laughed better than they did, let me tell you. So finally, when I was done, I got up, and I was leaving the space, and I turned back around, and I said, hey, you boys, is there anything else I can do for you? And the guy said, space heaters would be nice, you know? It's freezing down here. Now, those of you that know welding, that affects that. So the next morning, I walked into the production office, and I said, hey, everybody, how are you? And they said, well, Captain, how are you? What you been doing lately? And I said, well, I went down on the graveyard ship last night to talk to the welders there. Went, what, are you kidding? You actually went down there? And I said, yeah, I did. And they, who'd you meet? Harvey Hinken. Oh, God, not Harvey Hinken. Oh, yeah, he's pretty gruff, you know, rough around the edges. What'd you find out? I said, well, I want to know. Why don't you have space heaters in the ship? Because nobody ever asked. I said, you're kidding me. Can we do that? Can we get the space heaters down there? Yeah, I guess we can. So we had space heaters on the ship. Now, if you think the welders weren't paying attention, I kept doing that every week for the next 6 weeks. Different space, different place. Third week, one of the guys turned around and said, did you bring chocolate tonight? You know? So it made an impact. But the impact was we talked to each other like we equals. We talked to each other like I cared, because I did, because I understood where they were coming from and understood how important it was what they were doing. Okay. At the end of the time that the ship was being built, every ship gets an NDT inspection. And the average number of discrepancies on that NDT inspection that's checking the welding and everything for every ship of the class, 40 some odd of them, was around 140 some odd that they'd have to go back and fix. Samuel B. Roberts, 6. So little, so small, in fact, and they were so amazed that they went back and checked naval ship designs all the way back to 1942 and realized it was the lowest number since 1942. It's your people. It's how you treat them. They don't have to be in your crew. They are people you come in contact with, and if you treat them well and with respect, they will perform for you. Now, the day we were leaving and moving away from the pier, as we pulled away, and all the dignitaries are down to the congressmen and the admirals, and they're all, you know, waving and saluting, the bands are playing. As we were coming down the pier just to go out into the Kennebec River, there was this group of guys down at the end of the pier, as far away from the, you know, the crowd as they could be, in their coveralls and their hats and everything. And I looked down, and my XO said to me, hey, Captain, it's your friends. And I looked down, and it was all the welders. And they were like, don't let anybody see us do this. And they looked up, and I pointed at them, and I said, one prolonged blast for the welders. So, and I stood at attention, and I saluted, and they were all down there going, waving goodbye. And my XO walked up and said, you know what, Captain? I think they finally believe you are the captain. So, it's about your people. It's about who they are. It doesn't matter what school they go to. It's what they do. And Americans do great stuff. And if you treat them well and show them that you trust them and are interested in what they do, they will just do remarkable things for you. Okay, keep that in mind, all right? We're going to get back to the welders here. The next guy is a fellow that's a remarkable story. Fireman Michael Tilley. Michael Tilley is from Hannibal, Missouri. And every sailor that came aboard any ship that I ever commanded, I had him up in my cabin. And I sat him down, and I had his record. I talked to him about his family. I talked to him about what he wanted to do in the Navy. I talked to him about everything I could to just get a sense of who he was. And I knew the name of all my sailors, both on the cruiser when I had 480, and on the frigate when I had 200 and some odd. I didn't get to see Tilley, because the first time I saw him was at captain's mast. You all know what captain's mast is? Okay, if you're bad, you end up in front of the captain. It's not good. and it's called non-judicial punishment. And Tilly had arrived in Bath and gone to the local bar before he ever got to see me or really do much on the ship. And he wanted a beer, and the bartender asked him for his ID card, and he took out one and he gave it to the bartender, and it said he was 29. Tilly looks about 17. Bartender said, no, that's not going to do. And he said, oh, wait, I got another one. 28? So the bartender says no. Tilly gives him a hard time. Shore Patrol comes in, wants to know what's going on. Voila. So Tilly now comes before me, and it's one of these things, it's not a big deal. So I talked to the Master Chief of the command, the senior enlisted man, and said, what's the deal here? And he said, oh, he just needs a good talking to. He needs a good kick in the rear end. He just doesn't understand. Okay, and the XO agrees. So Tilly comes before me, and I said, you've embarrassed the Navy, you've embarrassed our ship, you've embarrassed yourself, and on and on and on. And I sort of busted him. He was pretty junior, so not really. And I fined him and everything. And when it was over, he said, Captain, I won't let you down. Won't let you down ever again. I said, great. And I walked away from that thinking, what a great leader I am. I'll never see Tilly ever again. I really gave him that great leadership. Wrong. Very, very wrong. So months later, the ship is commissioned, and we're out, and we get sent down to the Caribbean, and we do 2 or 3 drug busts. We knock off about 3 drug-running ships to the tune of about, I don't know, $40 million. We capture all these guys, and the Navy's very happy. So they send us into St. Thomas and the Virgin Islands, where there's a bar called Blackbeard's Castle. If you're familiar with that, it's on top of the hill. And Tilly by now he's been working hard, and he's not in trouble, and he goes with his buddies up to Blackbeard's Castle, and he's having a beer, a couple, and he decides he has to go to the men's room. And he goes, and there's a line outside the men's room, and he looks outside, and he sees bushes. So he decides he won't get on the line. He goes out into the bushes, and he looks up, and the restaurant has all of these mirror windows, Tilly thinks there are mirrors on both sides, and you know the rest of the story. It's very, very bad. And so he's now back in front of me for the second time. And, I'm thinking, okay, how do I calibrate this kid? So I get with him, and he comes to mast again. And now the Master Chief of the command is saying, maybe this isn't a good idea. Maybe this is the kid who's going to fall over the side, drop the projectile, do something wrong at the wrong time. Maybe we should just kind of transfer him off the ship. And I don't believe that, because as I watch Tilly, I understand that he makes mistakes, he makes bad decisions, but he's not a bad guy, and he works hard. And he's, you wonder what his background is, and in his record, didn't have a father's name. In his record, there's a whole bunch of things that tells me Tilly's had a rough life. So anyway, I give him another lecture. I fine him again, not a lot, and give him a chewing out, restrict him to the ship, whatever it is. And he tells me again, Captain, I'm not going to let you down. I went, yeah, okay, good. Don't let me down. And he walks off. And I'm now no longer convinced it's a great leadership situation. I'm hopeful that this isn't going to go bad. Several months transpire, and we're down in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. And things are going very well for us. We're shooting missiles, knocking targets down, catching submarines, doing a whole bunch of stuff. And I get a message that says, hey, there's a war in the Persian Gulf, and you're going to deploy 8 months early and get involved. And you're going to go in, about 6 weeks. So get back to Newport, Rhode Island, and get your ship ready. And I said, roger that. So it's just before Christmas, and we head back to Newport, Rhode Island. And en route, I get the crew together, and I tell them what the situation is and what we're going to do. And I said, I'm going to send half of the crew home just before Christmas, and you must be back 2 days after, so that the other half can go for New Year's and then back, and then we're going to deploy on the 20th of January. Everybody get it? And the whole crew at mast said, yes, sir, we got it. Don't screw your shipmate. This is 1 for 1. Be back on time. Yes, sir. Who's the one guy who doesn't come back on time? Tilly. He's 8 hours late. And now, unlike, well, I don't draw red lines, unlike that, I mean what I say. So Tilly now has to come before me because he has been late. He's UA, and the XO writes the recommendation. It's time for Tilly to go. 3 mass cases. I'm not a softie. Nobody ever makes it to 3. But by the way, the crew loves this guy. He is a hardworking guy. He's a good shipmate. He just, if you said princess or tiger, he'd pick the tiger door every time. He just doesn't get it. So Tilly comes before me, and the Master Chief of the Command says, Tilly, no, gun. It's got to go. And I'm about to sign the page 4 entry, despite all of these things I told you about, elevating your people, getting them there, and everything I've tried, everything I think I can try. I'm about to sign the page 4 entry that puts him out of the Navy. And he says, Captain, can I speak? Of course. What you going to say, Tilly? He said, please don't throw me out of the Navy. That's all I got. I don't Let's take a journey to the Middle East. We deploy, we go over there, and our job is to escort tankers that are coming out of the Middle East with crude oil, and I'm sure a lot of you know this, but about 89% of all oil that comes out of the Middle East, despite what all the newscasters tell you and Good Morning America and everything, comes nowhere near us. It goes to Japan and Europe. It does not come here. So when we go over there and we escort these guys and we keep them safe from attacks, we're helping the other economies of the world. Simple as that. When we got over there, the Iranians and the Iraqis were attacking around 6 ships a week in this area. The Iranians pretty much shoot them up here, the Iraqis up here, and as you know, they hit Stark up here and killed a whole bunch of our guys, and then they would come off the beach here with attacks. And so the international community wasn't doing much to protect them, so the US Navy jumped in and we started doing it. And our mission was to pick them up here, and when we would go through the Straits of Hormuz and then wind our way up to Kuwait City or other places where they would go to the oil terminals and pick up fuel. Very interesting place. This is what one of the convoys looked like. That's Gas Princess right there. She is a liquid gas carrier with an explosive range, if she goes up, of 8 miles. You can tell when we took this picture, we were inside of that, very nice. That's the largest tanker in the world, Bridgehampton, 500,000 deadweight tons. And this is what we would do. We'd get them all on a line, and we would drive down the road, and if the guys that wanted to attack them came up, we would run them off. And we would run them off by bringing missiles up on the rail and telling them, you leave or we shoot you. Simple as that. And I know people say that surface ships don't go that fast. You know, fighter pilots who can't think very much, but they'll tell you the surface ships don't go very fast. Well, let me tell you, if you're doing 30 knots and the other guy's doing 30 knots and you pass 100 yards away from that guy, you're going fast. And there's not a lot of room for error. And so that's what we would do. And if you don't think that the United States, the power of the United States is significant, the ships that would show up in that place, you know, in that little box, right there, very few of them would be US flag vessels. And it's pretty comical to see merchantmen from other countries making US flags, you know, 5 stripes, 6 stars, all of this stuff. You're laughing, but it's true. And they would come in there, and I wouldn't say we were looking for a fight with these other guys, but we would never push them out. I mean, we'd never push the merchantmen out. And I wouldn't say we were looking for a fight with the Iranians, but yeah, we wanted to take their asses on big time. And so let me go on. Excuse my language, I didn't mean to do that. Don't tell my wife, she'll kill me. So that's what it looked like. And when you got into it with them, I just want to say we were deployed 171 days. And at sea, 156 of them. We had always alert and ready for action, few relaxing moments, because you not only had this, but you had a lot of mines in the water, as you'll hear. And we had 14 convoys, 11, I was convoy commander, and the US flagged and other allies. And then our job, after on Roberts, that we had a tremendous successful time keeping the Iranians away and keeping the Iraqis away, who were also a little bit on the irresponsible side. Middle East force came on board the ship one day and he said, we're going to break you off from the convoy duties. We're going to put you down the mouth of the Straits of Hormuz and we want you to stop them. Don't start the next war, but if it does start, you finish it. And so we went from that and we went down to the Straits to engage the two Iranian frigates that were shooting up unarmed ships constantly and killing people. And the next subject that I want to talk to you about on this thing is Michael Tilley. Because you see, during this time that we're at sea, the 156 days, one day we actually had nothing going on and we were in the middle of the Persian Gulf. So I told the XO, let's see ships work, let's give the crew a break, let's put the helicopters in the hangar and we'll have a Steel Beach picnic on the flight deck, just tell the guys they gotta bring life jackets and gas masks and everything and whatever. So the XO gets on the 1MC and announces this, that we're gonna have a Steel Beach picnic, no uniforms. Tilley shows up with no clothes. The Master Chief of the Command wants to kill him. I just said, it's Tilley. I mean, he had skivvies on and booted, but it looks stupid, but that's Tilley. And then, Tilley, I have to digress, okay? I always ask everybody, do you think I was soft when I let Tilley go on that third mass case? And invariably, a lot of places, when I gave the speech at Harvard, they all said, oh, you weenie, you're so. And I looked at them and I said, in 29 years of naval service, 240 days of combat, 2 Bronze Stars, 2 Purple Hearts, lots of stuff. Smartest decision I ever made. Smartest decision ever made. Because if I threw Michael Tilley out of the Navy that day, I wouldn't be here tonight, because I'd be dead. And so would 222 other guys. So now you want to hear the rest of the story? Okay. So I used to go down. Tilley was working so hard that he had a space in the forward part of the ship called AMR-1 where we had a diesel. It was very, very difficult space. It was very confined. I think the Master Chief wanted him up there so he could lock him in and keep him away from everybody and not cause any trouble. But when you went into that space, it was immaculate. Everything was where it was supposed to be. Everything worked. It was tight. It was terrible. It was hard to work in. It was great. And so I'd go down at night until he would get off watch, and he would go down there and just be working and everything. And I brought him a cup of coffee one night, and I said, man, I'll tell you, you're doing a good job. And he said, Captain, I just don't want the Master Chief to be mad at me all the time. And I said, that's good. That's very good. And he said, what do I have to do to be successful? I want to serve my country. I want to be good at what I do. What do I have to do? And I said, you just keep doing what you're doing. We believe in you. We believe you can make it. We believe you can be successful. Just learn everything about this space and show professionally that you know what to do, and we will believe in you, and you will succeed. And he said, thanks, Captain. I'm not going to let you down, because I'd heard that before, and I was very excited. 4 days later, I had a suggestion box on the ship, and Chief Petty Officers don't like suggestion boxes. So I made everything be numbered so I knew whenever they threw something over the side. Tilley wrote me a note. It said, Captain Rinn, I'm in port and starboard. I got the night watch all the time. I never see the light of day. Don't you think it would be possible to put a porthole in the main engineering space? Remember this, okay? The Master Chief's upset. He thinks he's being disrespectful. I think he's being vintage Tilley. So I fold this up, put it in my drawer. I think it's kind of funny. So, okay, so we go on. We go down to the Straits of Hormuz, and we engage those suckers, and we basically stop them. In a 3-week period, their attacks go from 6 to nothing, and they go into port. They go away. They stop doing it. So we feel pretty good about ourselves. Hey, we've shut these guys down, and we've flown the flag, and we've stopped the indiscriminate attacks and the killings and everything. And so as a reward, we get to do one more convoy, and up to Kuwait City, And this is a picture of driving off the Sabalon on a day when he decided he was going to get in what they call a cordon sanitaire, which you basically put out and say, if you come within 8,000 yards, I shoot you. Okay, got that? And he was right on the edge of it, and you can see the missile on the rail. And I brought it up, and I said, you got 30 seconds? And he told me I didn't have the right to say that in international waters, and I said, Roger, you got 20 seconds. And he broke off and left. So that was one of the ships that was in the formation, took that picture. So we go to Kuwait City, we drop off a convoy, and we are headed to a replenishment with the Seattle, because we have 28% fuel on board, low, and we're screaming down the road when, and we come around the corner of Gutter. I'm in my cabin with the chief cook, complaining about too much spinach on the menu, no kidding, and the ship starts to vibrate, and I get called to the bridge, and there are 2 mines directly in front of us, and one about 200 yards on the starboard beam of the ship. And it doesn't take much to figure out, damn it, we're in a minefield. And it turned out later through the CIA listening and all these other things that the Iranians had decided that they weren't going to get rid of us at sea with their ships. So let's figure out whether these guys are going to drop a minefield in front of them. There are 14 mines in the minefield. And I gave the order, as soon as I saw this, for everybody to come up above the main deck of the ship to set the first condition or the major condition of readiness, zebra, and report when you're coming up. Everybody does that except for Mike Tilley. And he does it, or he doesn't do it, because he feels this is his moment. That if something goes wrong, they may need this diesel, #1 diesel. And so Tilley reports he's leaving the space and coming up above the main deck, and he closes the hatch and he stays down there. And so when I have the reports that about 90% of the crew is up above the main deck, we start to back out. I could see my wake behind me. I was pretty convinced I could get out. Had reported to everybody what was going on. And the red mine, the red dot you see there, was right underneath us when we started. So we came in and the mine was there. We just didn't know it. And the other 3, the light blues, are there. And there were 14 mines in the field. And this is the minefield. When the divers went into it after the fact, they located them all and said this is where they were. So I started to back out. And the largest explosion that I have ever experienced in my military career took place. I was 146 feet from the explosion. It broke my right foot. It shattered everything horizontal on the ship. In less than 20 seconds, we went from a 4,000-ton ship to a 6,000-ton ship. We took in 2,000 tons of water. The flames were 100 feet above the ship. We were broken in 2, and we were in big trouble. We had lost 2 spaces, and the way Navy ships are designed, you can lose 2, but if you lose 3, you go to the bottom. And so, in an instant, 40 minutes before sunset, we were in significant trouble, and the ship carries 4 diesels. 2 of them were destroyed. We had 1 left, and it was cracked. And so we were fighting desperately to keep power because all the pumps and everything on the ship are electric. The only thing that can possibly save us is #1 diesel, and it's up here. And who's up there? And nobody knows he's up there. And he's knocked unconscious in the explosion. And when the ship comes down, we're fighting for our lives, and we do. This goes on for 3 hours, 3.5 hours, and I could tell you all sorts of heroic stories, but I want to focus on this. In the disaster that goes on, we're broken in 2. You can see we're split, and the hull, that's the hull. That's HY80 steel. Next to titanium, it's the strongest steel in the world. 30-foot hull, just gone. So you could say we're in a reasonable bit of trouble. And the nearest ship's 148 miles away. So we're in it by ourselves. And ship's company, all of those guys that I talked to you about making them work hard, interchangeable, everything. They were doing everything, not only textbook, better than textbook. And we were losing. We were pumping thousands of gallons of water off the ship. We were fighting the fires. We couldn't get them out. And 2 distinctive things happened. I had to give the order to stop fighting fires, and because at one point I was standing on the main deck of the ship, and I could look up in a very surreal situation and see the fire about 6 feet above my head, burning, and yet my shoes were filling with water on the main deck. because we were pumping so much water onto the ship to fight the fires, we were actually sinking ourselves. So I went to the bridge and told everybody to stop fighting the fires. And my XO grabbed me so hard, he bruised my arm, asked me if he could talk to me on the bridge wing, and we stepped out there and there was a minor explosion, and he asked me if I bleep, 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 lost my mind, to which I said, no, the ocean's gonna put this fire out. And nobody's coming to help us, so we gotta do something, and so we did that. Sharks and snakes have arrived. Persian Gulf has lots of nice sharks, and they have lots of sea snakes. So at this point, we have 67 wounded. We have 1 diesel on the line and 1 we got to get on the line, but we can't get to AMR-1 because the passageways are all jammed. Nearest ship's 140 miles away, and the sharks and snakes have started to circle the ship. It's not your best day in the Navy. And as we're desperately trying to get power on, a phone call comes back to the main control station to Chief Walker, and it goes like this. Hey, this is Tilly. I'm up in AMR-1. Would you like the diesel? Do you need the diesel on? Walker's response is unprintable. And Tilly goes in, and the diesel governor is fractured on the top of it. So he calls back and he says, I've never done this before, but I've studied the card. So Walker says, well, you have to start the diesel. So Tilly climbs up on top of the diesel, because the governor's broken, so we can't automatic start it. And there's an air flask that's 1,500 PSI, with a line that goes to the diesel, to the governor, and for him to start it, he has to straddle it. He has to open the 1,500 air valve, and as the air comes between his legs to the governor, he has to stick a screwdriver into the governor and open it up to start the diesel. If the governor fails, there won't be anything left of Tilly. So he gets up there, he takes the card, he lines up the diesel using this card that he's never done before. He gets up there and calls back to Walker and says, you really sure you want me to do this? And Walker says yes, and so Tilly opens the valves and goes bam, and the diesel starts. And he's ecstatic. He just calls Walker. He says, I started the diesel. And Walker said, good, get it to the switchboard. Switchboard? I'm not an electrician. So Tilly climbs off the diesel, and he lines it all up using this card. And then he goes out into the place where the big switchboard is. He takes the EOS card for the switchboard, lines the whole doggone thing up. And just as he is about to throw the switch to bring the power from that diesel to the switchboard, the lights on the ship, with that last diesel we had, start to flicker, and they start to go out. How many of you saw Titanic? When what's-his-name goes down, or Gwyneth Paltrow goes down to save DiCaprio? I mean, why she would do that, I would never know, but we were there. And when the lights started to flicker, I said, if they go out, ball game over. We got to get off the ship into what I just described. And all of a sudden, they went on. The lights went on. And I said, I have no idea how that happened. We'll find out, but let's fight to save the ship. And it was Michael Tilly saved the ship. Now, Tilly remembers what I told him at Captain's Mast. You do anything wrong, you'll never see me, you know, you're just gone. Tilly was ordered to come up above the main deck. So Tilly isn't telling anybody he's down there. Nobody knows that he's done all of this. But essentially, Tilly saves the ship. So because of that power, it enables us to fight the fires and eventually put them out, de-water the ship, we stop the flooding, and we actually get ourselves up, and then we light off APUs, and we drive out of the minefield by ourselves. Pitch for God. I went up to the bridge at one point. There was a reason we had to get out of the minefield, and that's too long to explain. But I went up there, and everybody tells me, I looked over the chart and turned around and looked at everybody at the bridge and said, come to course 146, and don't come off that course unless I tell you. And everybody said, remember, trust, confidence, faith. They all looked at me and said, aye, aye, Captain, 146 it is. Turned the wheel, we lit off the APUs, and we drove out of that minefield. We drove past 3 mines that were less than 100 yards away from us. At the Board of Inquiry, after the mining, all the admirals said, how did you come up with 146? And I looked at him and I said, you know, I would like to tell you some John Paul Jonesian thing, you know, that makes me a hero, but I have absolutely no recollection where it came from. I can't remember that at all. So 146 got us out. And then the next morning when the ship showed up, we were still on the surface. And we eventually got towed into Dubai, where they cut the hull of the ship out and replaced it. And we took a lot of our gear off the ship and sent it home in a Connex container so that when they rebuilt the ship, they could put it right back into it and save the taxpayers millions of dollars. Two things happened in Dubai. The first thing is the president of the Dubai shipyard, who's a Dutchman, came to me and he said, I've never seen anything like this. I don't know how you guys could have possibly saved this ship. He said, you got a 30-foot hole, you had all this water in it. He said, you had all this colossal damage. He said, unbelievable. But he said, you know, Captain, there's something you need to know. Your main deck's cracked. The HY-80 steel is buckled. We can't find a single cracked weld. Not a single cracked weld. He said, and that's what held you together. Nothing broke. Those Mainers. So the second thing is I feel sorry for myself. You know, Navy's newest ship, Navy's youngest captain, you know, very swashbuckling sort of guy. $95 million worth of damage. This is not good. So I go out on this. This is a 1 million deadweight ton dry dock. We're 4,000 tons, so you can imagine how small we were in it. So I went out and I'm sitting on the side of the dry dock, and out of the corner of my eye, I see the Master Chief of the Command coming towards me, like the Wizard of Oz, you know. He's got a piece of paper in his hand. And he walks up to me, and I said, Captain, I said, Master Chief, what is it? He said, Captain, it's that damn Tilly. Now, Tilly hasn't told anybody, so very, very few people know that he's the guy that did what he did. And the Master Chief doesn't know yet. Gives me a piece of paper. It's from my suggestion box. And this is what it says. To Captain Rinn, from Fireman Tilly. Captain, with regard to my request for a porthole in the main engineering space, you have exceeded my wildest dreams. You got to save a guy like that. All right. Get control of yourself. All right. The ship came back to the United States, and you know it's a legend in the U.S. Navy. It's a great thing, but what's the important part about this? And there's a lot more to this. MIT, I speak at them every year. Why do I do that? Because MIT, the maritime engineering leaders of our country, have modeled Samuel B. Roberts 10 times. They've run the model 10 times. Ship never stays afloat more than 28 minutes. The David Taylor Model Basin, I'm sorry, MIT says 48 minutes. David Taylor Model Basin says 38. So the consensus is, when I spoke at MIT, the chancellor at MIT said, we can't figure out how it didn't sink, so maybe you can tell us, Captain. And I think it's guys like, when I testified before Congress, I said, well, God, and Fireman Tilly. And they all went, what? So here's the story on the crew members. 34 of my crew went on to be chief petty officers. That's an enormous number. 20 of them went on to be master chief petty officers. 5 of my officers went on to command. And now the story of Michael Tilly. Tilly stays in the Navy and becomes a second-class petty officer. No more mass cases, no more trouble. You know, he's the vaunted hero of saving the ship. And he meets a charming girl, Maine girl, and he decides to get married, smart man. And she says, Navy, pretty scary. A lot of deployments, you need to get out. So Michael Tilly gets out, and Michael Tilly goes to work for John Deere. And he becomes the regional manager for the John Deere distributorship in Lewiston, Maine. And then one day, an old friend of his from Missouri walks into the John Deere distributorship and says, hey, Tilly, what do you know about turbines? And he says, I started a diesel once. I said, not much. And he said, well, I'm going to Colorado, and I'm starting a company, and I need somebody I can trust. You're an old friend of mine. I'd like you to come with me. And so today, Michael Tilly is the chief operating officer of the power company in Colorado that provides 28% of the power to that state. And he's a millionaire. It's about your people. It will always be about your people. Look at them differently. All of you in this room are gifted. You're all hardworking. You're all driven. You're all devoted. You're the best the country has to offer. But you all have in you the power to inspire and to make people better. How many Michael Tillys do you have working for you? How many Michael Tillys or those welders are out there that you can inspire to be better than they ever thought they could be? Remember, life is a trip. It's about the journey. It's not about the destination. Go out and light that spark. Good luck. God bless you on your journey. Thanks a lot. Thank you.